Let's roll. This is Countercharge, your podcast for ranks, flanks, and kings of war. Join your hosts as they delve into the world of Panithor and bring you worldwide coverage of all things Kings of War.
Welcome to Countercharge. I'm Rob Enough.
I'm Donny Croce.
And I'm Trent Sosby. Let's just go ahead and hop in here because I think we actually have some hobby updates. Well, at least two of the three of us do. So,
what are you trying to say, bro?
I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You're probably right. You're probably right. Yeah, you're probably right.
You want to go ahead, Donnie?
Oh, yeah, sure. Just finished up the U.S. Masters. Placed an astounding 64th out of 64th in battle in there. So that was it was a good time. I went 1-5. But yeah, I always enjoy U.S. Masters. It's always a great tournament. You know, win, lose, or draw. U.S. Masters is fantastic. So swinging into that, my new primary faction or old primary faction, Basileans, again, you know, got a huge update in fractures. So I've been updating a few things. I did a Man-at-Arms Horde, one of the new Estelle 3D printed heroes, as well as the so-called laughing lion Orion. But the way I painted him, it doesn't look like he's laughing. So I think that's definitely artistic angle/photography. But yeah, that's what I've gotten done since Masters and getting ready for League of the Lake next weekend. So
We're talking to Chris at Masters about it. ExcaliburCon, it sounds like a great event, you know, and all the pop culture celebrities that are going to be there, and you get to play King's War. I'm like, wow, sign me up. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time. So, Donnie, did you play Goblins, Donnie, or did you play Basileia at Masters?
I played Basileans at Masters this year.
Okay. Are you going to stick with them for a while, or what's the plan?
Yeah, I'm going to run them for Lady here, it looks like, and I'm probably going to stick with them for a little bit. I've been trying to kind of get into either them or my Twilight King because I kind of want to get back to a close combat army. I'm kind of through my shooting phase after having played Goblins for a few years, so I kind of want to get into more of a either grindy or alpha strikey sort of class. Close combat army, more grind stuff, because that's sort of what my Twilight Kin and my Basileans both are. So that's sort of where I'm leaning. And then with the spoiler that Twilight Kin's coming out in Arrogance, I'm sort of leaning more heavily towards just playing Basileans, at least until Arrogance drops, because learn a new faction, then have them updated right away. It's not necessarily on my to-do list.
That's a very good point. Donnie, I don't know if you remember this, but when you, I was getting some flashbacks when you were talking about your shooting goblins. I played you at Adepticon in 2023 with, obviously not in 4th edition, but with your goblin list. It feels like a lifetime ago, but I just got some flashbacks to that game. You steamrolled me. So I don't know if you remember that or not.
Yeah, that goblin shooting list is pretty nasty. Yeah, and I do remember that game. Yeah.
I can agree. Yeah. It's just so much stuff to chew through and so many shots.
Relevant to this episode, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in the internet in the world, but as far as I know, I'm the only person to have a 25 plus drop goblin army that is completely full model count and fully mantic anywhere in the world.
I think I've heard you mention that before. And aren't some of your units actually above 100% model count?
Yes.
No, that's impressive. I shoot for the 50% +1 rule.
Yeah, a lot of my new stuff with Basileans and Twilight Kin are definitely like that. But yeah, that was an interesting time with the goblins and full model count.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's just because, I guess I'll hop into my hobby here too, talking about I don't even, did they even call it like preferred model count, full model count? I know they had the chart like back in the day, but I don't think they do that anymore. I think even they had it in the 3rd edition rule book. But it's actually interesting because like my undead army, I have 2 like zombie legions, and they're kind of like the main core that I have. So I do like the multi-bases like most people do, and have the basing bits on there. Like I have some walls, I have some broken statues. Like the whole idea is they've this undead legion is like swamped this human town and kind of like destroyed it, right? And then I have some like 3D printed corpse carts on there too. But if you actually count the models, I mean, I know the corpse cart like takes up some room, but if you count the models, I think it's right. I think there's like 30 zombies on the Legion. So I kind of like doing that on the larger, like the Legion and the Horde bases, at least for the infantry. But I find myself whenever I'm doing regiments and the smaller unit sizes, I actually prefer to like not have basing bits and then just put like try to put all like 100% models. So like for a regiment it's 20. I kind of just like the way that looks on the table. So that's something that I've been working on, and then going into my hobby update. I think I can't remember if I mentioned it last time or not, but I'm working on building up a large core units for undead. So I'm putting some more zombies together. I really want some more zombie hordes. I only have one right now because my other two are multi-based as legions. So I have the zombies mostly like painted up and ready to go. I have to do some touch-ups on them, but I'm the last thing I've done is I've 3D printed my basing bits, and I think I've base coated them. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I base coated them. So I got some more work to do on that. But it's a large chunk, and this is the first time I've gotten some not zombie spearmen, skeleton spearmen, because I've only really used zombies and revenants before. So now I'm going to try out some of the skeletons, and I have some of the smaller unit sizes for the revenants as well. So I think altogether it's like, well, I have them in the drawer right now. I think it's like 12 units I'm working on. So we'll see. I don't know. I don't know if it'll probably take me another year to get it done because I have a little one on the way a week from today as of recording. So I might drop off the face of the earth for a few months after that. That's what I got going on. Rob, have you done anything on your end?
I mean, what I am doing is cleaning. I am trying to get the hobby station. The garage is a complete unmitigated disaster, and it's been brutally hot here all summer. 95 degrees, 75% humidity. It's ridiculous. It's like I'm living in Florida, come on. So no, I'm trying to get that. And I've also been trying to repair. I don't know, maybe I've said this before. I'm trying to repair my air compressor. I've got like a nice airbrush compressor that I bought. It's like an Iwata Ninja Sprint Spirit, whatever it is, but it's like $300. So I'm trying to repair it. And I'm not an electrician. So we'll see how I get on with that. I may end up just buying a new one. But yeah, so that's really what I've been doing. Matt Crozier reminds me all the time how much he's been painting, right? So he's gonna crush me again. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, so not direct hobby, but hobby adjacent.
I'm trying to get ready to hobby, right?
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
honestly, like once we get into like September, October, the temperature should drop a little bit, and my hobby room will be a little bit more friendly.
Yeah, I finally had to. I was set up in the garage when we first moved to the new house, but you guys on the podcast can't see it, but you can see I'm finally have my setup inside because, it's like Rob said, this summer's just been absolutely brutal here with the humidity and the heat too. But yeah, let's jump into it. Do we want to hit the community updates?
Yeah, let me start. I just want to make a comment. The Great Wargaming Survey is out. It's an annual tradition that's hosted by Wargame Soldiers and Strategy Magazine. If you haven't done it, we'll put a link to it in the show notes. It's cool, man. It's really neat. A lot of cool questions, and when they're done, they actually have a podcast for the magazine, and they'll go over the results, and they have the blog. They'll share the results, but it's kind of a litmus test on where we are in terms of wargaming, in terms of the wide community. Like what genres are we into, what periods, and just what's the trends in wargaming. And I like that. And there's historically it's been a lot more historical games in on this survey, but over the last decade or so, you're seeing more 40K and other sci-fi fantasy games popping in there as well. So yeah, if you haven't done it, we'll put a link to it in the show notes. You can find it anywhere. If you just look up the Great Wargaming Survey, and this is the 13th one. So yeah, put your thing in. There's going to be opportunities to tell them what you think about Kings of War as well. So it's one way to get maybe little visibility to Kings of War. And then Trent, you were going to an event, right? Noah Hutton, didn't he have a one day you were supposed to go to?
Yep, that was my one community update that I had. So Noah Hutton hosted a one day in West Virginia on, I guess it was last weekend. I think it was on the 1st of August. I did not make it, unfortunately.
For shame.
But he had a good turnout. He had 10 people there. And get this, I was talking to him about it. It sounded like it was a great event. It sounded like a great group of people. The first place person, I hope I got this right. I'm not looking at the message. The first place person was playing orcs. Second place was playing Kingdoms of Men. So I was like, oh, shaking it up a little bit.
I like it.
Thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Donnie, you've got some tournaments coming up too, right?
Yeah, there's a few Midwest tournaments. We got Lady of the Lake coming up here in the middle of August on, I'm blanking on, I think it's August 15th and 16th. It's the Saturday, Sunday at Excalibur Con, which is a much larger gaming and cosplay and popular culture convention. So a bunch of things, it's like come play Kings of War, meet the Honky Tonk Man and Jimmy Hart, same convention, good time. And then we got a new tournament starting up in Verndale, Minnesota.
Rocks and Cows. Is it Terry Erickson's event?
Yes.
So Terry reached out, Rocks and Cows is in Verndale, Minnesota. It's going to be October 17th and 18th. Sounds like it's going to be a fun time. How far is Verndale? Where is Verndale exactly?
Verndale is like northwest Minnesota, so it's kind of between Duluth and Fargo, closer to the northwest part of Minnesota. So it's a few-hour drive from Duluth or from the Twin Cities, often kind of that corner of the Minnesota, more rural farm country Minnesota up in the northwest corner. So it's cool, and he's going to try out a 3,000 point event actually. So it'll be 3,000.
Oh my gosh!
Oh wow!
So yeah, that will be a little different.
That's interesting. Is it still going to be 65 minutes on the clock? Got to be a little extra time, right? You would think.
Yeah, I think they're planning to do 75, but I'm not 100% sure. They haven't released like a rule pack or anything fully for it yet, but they've been discussing a few things. But yeah, there'll probably be a little bit of extra time on the clock. But I mean, you can just crank it down to like 55 minutes to make it a speed tournament with 3,000 will be fine.
Well, and we are going to get, we will be getting Terry on to chat about the new event. So that'll be coming in the very near future. We should also mention that you've got the Ohio GT, right? That's another one that's coming down the pipe. And that's going to be October 3rd and 4th. And we just had Sam Kula on, who is one of the TOs of that event. And Sam joined us in the List Builder studio. He's the first one out of the gate for 4th edition. And big news, we got Sean Troy coming up next, our reigning U.S. master. So I'm really excited about having those guys on. And then you have also Renegade is November. It's a little ways away, but November 21st and 22nd, you get the Renegade GT in Plymouth, Minnesota, which, as I understand, is sort of a suburb of Minneapolis, but maybe a little farther away.
It's a little north. Yeah, I mean, it's technically a northern suburb, I would still call it, but yeah, it's a little bit north of the main Twin Cities metro area. And yeah, that's a pretty well attended multi-game convention as well, with a ton of different systems and that sort of thing as well. And so that's always a fun time too. So yeah, busy fall in the Midwest region with a bunch of GTs as there often is up here. So
it was interesting. I was looking at the map of Minnesota, and for some reason I had it in my mind that Duluth was like very, very north Minnesota. It's only like halfway up the state. You've got like a lot more northern. I mean, you got that Minnesota stretches a lot farther north. And I'm like, wow, is there any gaming up there?
Not really. No, it's about 2 hours to Canada, and it's all like much smaller towns and things like that. So there really isn't any. In fact, I might be the most northern Kings of War player in Minnesota now that I built my new house. It was Alec and his family, but now I think it's me by a few miles, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, it's a lot of like smaller towns and things. Like I'm sure that they have gamers and different things, but as you know, with like wargaming, it's sort of hard to have a critical mass in like a really small town. With our hobby, the way it is, it's not that it can't be done. Terry and those guys are showing that it can be done in a really small town and it's possible, but it tends to be in a little bit of larger communities and that sort of thing, just because there's so much hobby commitment and things to getting in.
What's interesting is you mentioned Alec Habig, who's one of your Lake SWAT members, and it reminded me of the conversation I had with Chris at US Masters about maybe we're going to see the resurrection of the Lake SWAT podcast. You have any comments, Donnie?
It's certainly been kicked around here and there, and yeah, it's something that me and Chris both really enjoy doing, and we both taken it at different times as kind of the lead person at different times. Obviously, he founded it and ran with it for years. And then when he got sort of busy with other life things for a long time, like I sort of took it with it for a while. And now we've all kind of gotten busy. So yeah, it's certainly a possibility. It's something that we've talked about. It's something that we really enjoy doing, but we don't have like a definite timeline on getting that resurrected yet. But but really it just comes down to us gathering together and talking, and then having somebody who's motivated enough to edit it, as soon as we get that
100%.
lined up, which can happen pretty quick, then
Hopefully by the end of the year, we hear something.
All right, with those updates, we do have a few announcements for this episode, actually. So the biggest one, as of recording, I think the email came out yesterday. They have the Siege of, I don't know, I'm probably going to butcher this. I'm just going to go for it, though.
Let's go with Samarik.
Samarik, Siege of Samarik summer campaign. So it starts on the 14th of August. It runs from the 14th to the 30th across those 3 weekends. And players can take part in either Kings of War, Champions, or Armada. So it's not just Kings of War there. So there's 2 campaign outcomes. So it looks like basically Samarik stands or Samarik falls. And the winning outcome will become part of the ongoing history of Panethor. So it's your chance for your games to like matter for the lore of the universe going forward. It's pretty cool. It sounds cool. So players choose which side they're fighting for before each game, and then they'll record their results. There's no like faction requirements, so any faction can fight for either outcome. And Mantic is encouraging players to come up with kind of like more specific, like your own narrative reasons for getting involved in the actual siege. So it's kind of cool. Like you take this core idea where it's like a bigger idea, and then it allows people to add some fluff into it to be like, oh well, my undead army is fighting against the siege for like this reason whatsoever. So I think it's some cool fluff that they got going on for it for sure.
It reminds me of Siege of Prague, which is a Warhammer thing that they did like back in the day. Look, you had me at beta siege rules, right? Because my castle, as I think I said in the episode, my castle's itching to come out.
And yeah, that's the biggest thing is they've released new beta siege rules for 4th edition. So I guess they had siege rules for 3rd edition, but they didn't get released like in the main 4th edition rule book. So the beta's out, and they're completely optional. So you can play the campaign like you normally would with Kings of War, Champions, Armada. You can play any point values, like whatever, right? But you can. It gives the players a chance to fight around what Rob was saying, like fortifications, walls, castles, gates. It really gives you that feel of like, okay, my army is defending the gate and that army is attacking it. So go out there and check those out. It's pretty cool. The actual website will go live on the 14th of August. So there's not an official website right now. The only information is from the emails and Mantic, and I believe they have a blog post about it as well. But then they'll have a dedicated website where I'm sure that's where the players will submit their results, and you can follow the live standings, which is cool too. So it'll give you like real time results. Just a couple other notes. So only one player submits each game, and they're going to limit you one result per person per day is what it has right now. So it sounds pretty cool. The campaign unfolds in 2 parts, and the standings after the first 2 weekends. So that sounds like the first 2 weeks are going to be like part 1, and then those standings will affect the final part in part 3, which we'll get more information about when the site goes live.
Chris's arm a little bit. There will be a special prize at Lady of the Lake raffled off to anyone who submits Lady of the Lake results for the campaign. So it's optional, but if you want to submit one of your Lady of the Lake games for the campaign, there will be a special prize at Lady of the Lake for participating in the siege.
Oh, that's cool. A good way to get some more involvement there.
Yeah, it almost feels like Chris did this intentionally to be like the first weekend of the Siege of Samarik. Happens to be ExcaliburCon, so good on him for marketing 101. He's hooked in.
And with that, I think we're going to go to a commercial break. And then when we bring it back, we'll start with our main topic of the episode.
I'm Tyler Schultz, loser at Vanguard, but countercharger in Kings of War. And you're listening to Countercharge.
Welcome back. Let's get started with the main topic here. So, painting armies faster. This was actually Donnie's idea, but it really resonated with me. So I think we've talked about it a lot recently. I feel like everybody that's came on the podcast, especially some people with the Masters ones, everybody's just talking about their lack of time.
We just did that episode about that you would have already heard about buying secondhand models. And we had that total digression where I was talking about bigger armies. And it's like, this like dovetails nicely into this conversation tonight.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, everybody wants to hobby, right? But we have so much other stuff going on. There's only so many hours in the day. And so we thought it would be a good idea to talk about some of our tips and tricks that we've learned over the years about how to get models on the table faster. I keep wanting to say speed painting. I'm trying not to say that for this episode because I feel like when people hear speed painting, they think of like contrast paints and speed paints. And we're going to talk about that. That is definitely like a viable way to go about it. But we're talking more so about like the process that we use. So not necessarily like a specific product, but maybe like the way that we batch paint, the way that we prime, or anything like that. So I have a question for you guys to get us started. Um, have any of you ever abandoned a hobby project? Maybe not necessarily just abandoned, but like put it on the back burner because it just took like way more time than you initially thought it would.
Yeah, I'll kick us off. Yeah, I have a underwater abyssal army, and this was done before they did flood the abyss and all that. Like, so I made like resin bases, right? So I sculpted these like corals, and so I have the army. It's all built, it's all ready to go, but there is no paint on any of it, and it's probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years old at this point. And I was just saw it the other day, like it's just sitting there. I will say the metal Molochs don't really give me a lot of inspiration to get back to it. You know, I'm like,
fair.
oh, yeah,
Fair
yeah.
point.
But yeah, so it's one of those ones that maybe I'll get back to it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I'm sure Donnie doesn't abandon anything because he just goes big, 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 and just keeps adding and adding and adding because he's a nutter.
Yeah, definitely with armies. I haven't really abandoned an army, but train actually that has been put off a number of times until I finally put together my whole train set for the Battle for Lake Swat one day that I ran this last spring. But yeah, for years I had started and stopped doing train because I kept getting sucked back into doing more armies and things. But I had always intended to build like a massive train set because I hadn't really done any kind of large scale train building ever since I'd owned my game store, and I'd built a bunch of train and boards and everything back for that. And so I'd gotten out of like train building for years and years and years. And I kept putting it off because there was always some other new army that I wanted to do or new army unit. And so that's probably the one hobby project that I really have put off because it took a ton of time and just had to get down to the grind. That's what I want to do.
Did you abandon a project, Trent?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I know in the last couple of episodes that I've been on, I had mentioned, I'm like, oh man, I have my old Forces of Nature army from 3rd edition, and I had all these grand plans about redoing it and getting it up to snuff, especially with the releases. I mean, the releases were awesome, like with the Pharaon models and all of the new sculpts, Avatar of the Father, and all the good stuff. I did the exact opposite of that. I sold the army. I got rid of it. I just did it. I was like, I can't, because I always like, I have this undead project that I'm working on right now, and undead's like my baby. It's really the only army other than a couple of games that I played with Forces of Nature that I've played. And I think like with the limited amount of time that I have right now, this is more so from like a gameplay perspective, maybe. But I mean, I played 6 games of 4th edition since this came out, right? I don't get to play like very frequently. Like my local group meets up. We try to meet up like once a month and get a couple games in. But I'm like, man, if I was getting regular games in, it would be nice to have different armies. But I think like right now, new edition, I have some hobby projects that have like given me a little hobby mojo to like get back into it, like for undead specifically. I'm like, I'm just gonna focus on them for now. And free up some funds to pay for a couple more zombies or something like that. And I think it was just a lot of it was I had like like maybe a third of the army built out. Everything else was either like fully built, painted, based, and everything like that. Everything else was like still on sprue or assembled. I hadn't even like primed anything yet. And the problem is I could not decide what to do. Like I had all these grand plans because I knew I wanted to rebase it, right? I was like, I'm not sticking with the same, like I did it like 4 years ago. Like I'm not sticking with the same bases that I got. and I just kept going back and forth, and I'm like, oh man, I just can't. I can't commit right now.
Mhm.
But I do have ideas about another army, and this is way out of left field. I mean, I'm actually thinking about Abyssal Dwarves for my second army.
Interesting.
So, and I think it's because I've been talking to Noah a lot, and I'm like, dude, that looks kind of fun. As I didn't realize, I don't know why, I didn't realize the Abyssal Dwarves, you have like the Ratkin slaves and the Orc slaves and stuff. I mean, you can do some like pretty cool, like flavorful stuff with it. So I think we kind of all have been in the mindset of, like I said, not necessarily just dropping something completely, but maybe just putting it on pause, whether that's your underwater abyssals or your terrain or whatever is going on. And also, Rob, by the way, I think if you need any tips painting coral, Matt Crozier might be able to help you out. If you want to get some hobby going.
Yeah, it's and this is done back. We didn't have 3D printing, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's all like, yeah. So what
That's
are you
cool,
gonna do?
man.
Yeah. You know, one thing I wanted to drop in here, and there's not really a good spot to put it, but just if you are really into big armies and getting stuff to the table quickly, Dave Taylor, hobby legend, right? XGW, has a book that he kickstarted a while back, and you can still find it. It's called Armies and Legions and Hordes. It's a great book. It gives you a lot of tips about painting big armies and those kind of big hobby commitments. So if you haven't checked that out and you're into books, like I'm a big book guy, check it out. Dave Taylor's Armies, Legions, and Hordes.
I've never heard of that before. I'm definitely going to check that out.
Bro, I got knowledge.
Yeah, you do. You're an old head. You old
No,
hammer
I
guy.
think I spend too much time on the internet is my problem, right? I suck it all in. My wife says it's useless information. We just proved her wrong.
Here's a follow-up question for you guys. Do you enjoy like the hobby aspect more than gaming? I'm not saying like you can't enjoy both of them. Do you see it like, or do you see hobbying, like painting, as kind of like the means to the end of like, well, I have to do this so I can play with a painted army? Or is it kind of like separate?
It's not separate. I see it as the gaming piece justifies my hobby. I'm here for the hobby. The game. It's like when you have action figures, right? Like if they're just on your shelf and you get to play with them, like it's like, what's the point? The gaming piece is just like the justification of why are you going to paint 10,000 points of orcs, whatever. Like it's why are you going to paint all this terrain? There's the reason. And you can tell yourself, well, it's not just for looking pretty on the shelf. It's for playing with as well. So I love the process. I love hobby.
I'm right there with you. The biggest thing for me is I have to have some sort of deadline. So the thing that got me to paint, like actually finish painting my first army, was signing up for a tournament. I just signed up for a tournament out of the blue. I still had to paint like half of it, but that's the only way I operate, really. Donnie, what about you?
For me, it's, I mean, like, I really enjoy the hobby aspect, and the hobby aspect is really fun, and it is kind of separate for me from the gaming aspect. When I first got into the hobby stuff, it was ironically just because I couldn't make Mage Knight nights because I started working on the road. So my entire Warhammer and now Kings of War path all started simply because of a day of the week scheduling issue with my work. And so I thought initially I was going to have to just paint stuff to get through it to gaming. So that's what brought me into the hobby, was being able to game and paint. But then I just really enjoyed it and had a lot more fun with it and got a lot better at it than I ever imagined I possibly would. I thought I was just going to have to slog through it to be able to play the game, and that I was never going to be artistic or anything like that. But now I really enjoy it. And for me, it's kind of a separate parallel part of the whole hobby. I mean, I've got, dozens of units on my shelf that I've never actually fielded for a bunch of different factions and games because while I do paint towards my tournament lists and I get those things done, I also grab other models and things, and I've painted things over the years. Like, whenever I walk into a game store and I play a game, I tend to try and buy something. So, I picked up a lot of models. So, I've painted like Basilian ballistas and all kinds of forces of nature models, and like Elohai and Sisterhood Scouts now that I painted that I don't even have in any of my current Basilean lists. So I definitely do it as a parallel side thing, and for me it scratches a different itch. It's like being able to sit down and just sort of zone out with like a podcast or something on TV, or even just without it and just painting at the desk and being able to just kind of sit there and paint is a different aspect of the gaming and the hobby than the than the competitive gaming itself.
A lot of what you just said really resonated with me. Where when I first started, kind of like what I was saying, like I work really well with deadlines. So the first time that I painted an army, I was like, well, I really, really want to play this game and I want to play with painted models and go to this tournament. So like I have to sit down and slog through the painting and get it done. But like after doing that a few times, I feel like the hobby side of it now, it's like meditative, right? Kind of turn your brain off, like you said, you turn a podcast on and you just sit there and enjoy yourself. And it's funny. I think that speed painting. I'm just going to say speed painting, but again, I'm not just talking about like speed paints and contrast paints, like just methods to quickly paint models and still make them look good, right? I think speed painting is like the number of resources that are out there now on the internet, whether it's like YouTube, whether it's a book like Rob was talking about, whether it's asking Chat GPT, whatever it is, like it's insane all of the resources that are out there for like new hobbyists and new people to tabletop wargaming and wargaming in general. I had tried to get into Warhammer Fantasy Battles back in the day, like before it got nuked. And I remember I wanted to play vampire counts, and I bought and built like the skeletons, but the first time I tried to paint him, like everything just went wrong. Like I had the old Citadel primer can and I didn't know what I was doing, so I held it too far back and it all got grainy, and I tried to paint over it and I was like, dude, this looks like I'm not doing that, and I dropped it. Like I didn't think about wargaming again. I was like, well, I guess I'm not talented enough to do it, right? But then eventually I found Mantic, and obviously sticking with the undead, right? Undead for life. And I finally just went online and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna figure this out. And I found my zombie recipe where I was like could paint 50 zombies in like 2 days time of just grinding after it and like be happy with the result. So I think it's really interesting because like obviously it's like part of the hobby, right? It's a large part of the hobby. So, but it's also I would argue it's probably the largest barrier to entry. Like if you're new to wargaming, seeing, especially on a ranks and flanks game, mass ranks and flanks game like Kings of War, I mean, your average army, I'm just going to pull it out of my ass here, is probably 100 models. Like that's intimidating to look at for the first time. So all of the resources out here nowadays, where it's like, hey, paint this orc in 30 seconds and it looks great from 3 feet away. Like that's awesome to get new people into the hobby. But with that, I think this kind of segues into our next point here, is that how do you guys feel about like separating like painting standards? Because I think it's fair to say that you spend more time on your centerpiece models, like whether that's your individual or like your big Titan, your big giant, your big dragon, than you would on like, and I keep going back to zombies because that's what I know, an individual zombie on a Legion base, right? So I think you can kind of split it up between that, like what we like to say is like tabletop quality, maybe for like the core infantry units. You have character quality for your wizards, mages, and then I would say like display quality would be like top tier painting job that you would want for like your general, your dragon, or like whatever it is else that you have supporting your army.
Definitely something to be said about that, and with styles and things too. Especially when you've got 20 guys rammed together in a base, or 16 guys and some train and different stuff like that. There's a lot less focus on each individual model in that unit, and a lot less that you can actually even see, because it's like with a hero model or like a Titan model, people can get a 360 view. They can easily look at all of that and they can see all of that. Whereas if you've got 20 Basilean Paladins on a 80 by 100 base, or 100 by 80, however you want to say that, the backs of the belt or the backs of the cloaks and different things like that for the guys in the middle of that unit are going to be very hidden. And so like when you're running through and you're painting all the belts and you're painting all those different things, and then you wash everything, you can kind of look at all those 20 models and you can sort of bury the 5 or 6 guys that have the most mistakes, like right in the middle of the unit. Nobody's ever going to see it.
Yeah, that's great. Like once you're painting everything, if we talking about it a little bit later, but like if you're batch painting it, right, and you have like 40 infantry guys out, you paint them all out, you get them done, and then you lay them out. When you're laying them out on the base, it's like, oh, well, that guy looks a little bit better. Let's stick him in the front, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of you use your basing to hide not necessarily mistakes, but maybe just you want to emphasize your higher quality work. We'll say it like that. And I think that the good way to say it is you spend your hobby time where people actually look. Like set the unit out on the table like you would be like you're playing a game or you're looking at your display board at a tournament or whatever it is, and be like, you know what, if it looks good right there, I think it's good to go, right?
Mike McVeigh, who was a heavy metal painter for Warhammer back in the day, he has this very famous diorama, which is wood elves, cavalry running down some skeletons. If you're a Warhammer player back in the day, you know what I'm talking about. He didn't paint the backs of the models. He literally only painted what you could see from one direction. You know, it's a good tip. Like if people aren't going to look at it, like we've had some people on the show before that have talked about, like, why would you paint like the underside of the model if you're like in the middle of a 40-man unit? They're not going to see it unless you're OCD like me. You'll let it go, right? So yeah, I think there's some great tips there.
So I think with that, let's move into some of the actual methods that we've used, whether currently or in the past, to kind of get models to that tabletop quality and get them on the table. So I have an example. I know I mentioned it before. I think starting off with an example will be the best way to kind of show like what we're thinking about here. And the one that I like to use is the simple recipe I have for my zombies. I can't take credit for this. I found it online forever ago. I wish I could remember so I could drop like the video or whatever I found. But I think one of the keys, and actually a couple people on the Facebook post that we made asking for tips and tricks that other people have used had mentioned this. And I primed, I used a colored primer. So not just like black or white. I primed all the zombies in necrotic flesh. So I knew that was like going to be the main base tone for their skin. And with the zombies, like they're mostly skin, right? So that's 80% of the base coating done right there. And then I did a simple base coat with their clothes. Like most of them are wearing some kind of like pants, like ripped up shirt. And then similar things. Some of the models had hair and some other small details, like maybe some weapons or some bones sticking out or something like that. So just a really quick base coat. And then the biggest trick here that I think that saved it all the time is you take the base coated model where one, like, 3/4 of the base coating was done with the primer. And then I use the Army Painter Quick Shade Strong Tone to slap a wash on there. Now, the Quick Shade will, the way that it's advertised is like you dip the model and then set it back down. I wish that was true. That would save a ton of time, but this stuff is just so thick and gloopy that I'm like, all right, you gotta brush it on. You can't. You kind of gotta like control it.
Well,
a little
you
bit,
can
right?
dip it, but you can also mount it to the drill bit and make a bucket with a lid, drill a hole in it, and actually put it in the bucket and spin off the excess.
Oh man, see, that's great. I'm gonna add that to my list right there.
That's like a thing I did like in the early 2000s. I painted somebody's like Battle Master's army, and he's just like, I just want this painted. So I'm like, cool, we're gonna use craft paint to base coat it, and we're gonna just give it a real dip, and we're gonna let it roll.
So you just spin it off, basically. So you dip and spin it off. Oh man, yeah. Forget a brush because you basically sacrifice the brush because it's like
correct.
Because it's such a strong.
I mean, it's basically like a polyurethane stain, right? That's basically what it is.
Which I've actually used on Flames of War models. I've actually used Minwax stain from just Menards, Home Depot, that sort of thing. Doing smaller scale Flames of War, World War II miniatures, just straight up, Minwax right over the top of it. Looks like dirty mud,
Yeah, I could see where that like real grimy feel from it would work really well in that scenario. And then for me personally, like you could leave the quick shade on there, but it's really, really shiny. And I like my stuff like pretty matte. So I'll hit it with a matte varnish through the airbrush. You could just use a rattle can. You don't have to use the airbrush. And then really, I think the next two steps, you could call it done right there and be good. Base it up and be done. but I think the next 2 steps really makes it worth it. So what I would do is I would paint the eyes. So just like a dot of white, and then I kind of went for like a really simple glowing blue effect on there. Just kind of fits my backstory. But then my favorite thing, and this is why I like Undead so much, at that point, I would glue them on the base. I would get everything based. I would get all my stuff sealed down. I like using the Geek Gaming Scenics. Their base ready-made mix. I love it, and then I add some tufts in there. But after everything was said and done, I would kind of do what we talked about at the beginning. I would set the unit on there at the table and just look at it. And I would see a sloppy line here, or maybe I messed up the eye. I would take Citadel, Blood for the Blood God, and be like, all right, well, that's a blood splotch right there, and just erase away all the mistakes. So I think that recipe worked really well for me. And I've done it a couple of times. Like I did it the first time I painted my army, and then I'm like, oh man, I need some more zombies. So I just do it again because it's so effective. It really is. And I love the way it looks.
Yeah, for me, you just keep in mind it's bases, faces, and shields. If you just focus on those 3 things, that's what people are their eye is gonna get attracted to. Now, if you want to paint the details like the leather straps and the eyes, that's fine. But if you're trying to get an army done quicker, skip some of those details and come back to it later, right? I mean, you can always come back to it later.
One of the interesting things about eyes that I actually picked up from a Golden Demon painting winner, Sean Kilgore, who used to play a lot of Warhammer Fantasy back in the day and all that. And he was been featured in White Dwarf magazine and a whole bunch back in the Warhammer Fantasy days. And his thing is never paint eyes. Don't paint eyes at all. Like all you do is either dry brush or you highlight around the eyes or you use some sort of shade. And it looks way better than painting the eyes ever would, and it's way faster. And that's kind of the techniques that I've used. I mean, there's a lot of people who painted eyes and they look really, really good. And so I don't want to say that that's a bad technique to never do by any means. But like ever since he showed me that, dry brushing or highlighting around the face and around the eye bones, and or with the washing, depending on what type of model you're doing, like my eyes have looked way better than any time that I ever painted eyes ever in my life. And I haven't painted eyes on a model in 15 years because of it.
Yeah, and if you're gonna paint eyes, there's tricks, right? If you want to paint eyes, you don't have to paint it like the traditional way where you actually put a stripe where a vertical stripe where the pupil's gonna be and clean it up. If you just want to do it fast, just paint the whole eye a dark color, like a dark gray, black, whatever, and then just add 2 little dots of white. It just gives you the impression of an eye without making it too difficult. Also, it helps avoid some of that crazy eye stare that you get if you put the pupil in so if you paint it white and you have to land that pupil, it looks, if the eyes don't match, it looks real bad. But this other way, go the other way, paint it black.
Really bad.
And just go dot of white, a dot of white, and your eye from 18 inches away is just going to fill it in. You're going to see the eye, but it takes no time at all. So that's what I do for all the ranks and flank stuff. Just black, 2 dots of white in each eyeball, and I'm done.
So you do that. So you guys do that for your core units, right? Like your infantry units, your hordes, your regiments.
Well, I do that. Donnie doesn't do it at all. I want to try that.
I haven't painted a single eye on any model in 15 years.
Oh, no model at all. Okay.
Yeah.
I never would have guessed though. I mean, I've seen some of your armies before. We were just talking about. I played your goblins, I knew.
Yeah, and that's all. That's all highlighting and dry brushing around the eyes, and or washes. Like every single one of those. Like with the goblins, it's all highlighting around the facial features around the eyes, and I never actually touched the eye. It just looks like I did because I highlighted everything around it.
What's interesting too is another trick is you just pick the right army. So you were talking about zombies, I would have just painted the eyeball white, and I'd probably use some kind of technical contrast paint. Ghostly ethereal paint, and just cover the white in that and spread it out a little bit like it's glowing and leave it at that. You don't have to mess with pupils and all that stuff. Just a glowing eye. That's all you need. And some armies can look really good with that.
Yeah, and it's surprising with the no eye technique thing, even on monsters and things, even on dragons and things, I've done that exact same thing, even on really large eyes where you'd think it'd be super obvious, but I haven't painted eyes on dragons or any of that in years.
Donnie, could you tell us some more about how you painted your goblins of red feather? A little bit more about your method for your goblin army?
Oh yeah, what are the big things with Goblin? I mean, obviously we've talked a little bit about like the assembly line painting and the different stuff like that, but one particular tweak that I did on it, and I kind of call it the red feather method because I did it with the Goblins of Red Feather Army, although it originated back when I did zombies and everything back when in my first undead army as well, is that if you have an ununiform type army like goblins or zombies or even ogres or different types of things like that, where they're not all fancy matching uniforms like Basileans or something like that, if you take a color and then go through and paint everything, you're not just painting boots or something like that like you would if you're doing Basileans and everything's matching. Like if you pick up your red brush and you go through and you paint the shoes on one goblin and the pants on the next goblin and the shirt on the next goblin and then the belt on the next goblin with that color, none of it looks uniform, but it all ties together because you're using the same color palette. So it unifies the entire army, but yeah, it makes it look like a goblin or a zombie thing that doesn't match at all. And it's a really fast way to paint. It's also takes away a little bit of the tedium because you're not just painting 240 boots, in a row. If you're doing, 3 hordes or something like that, because you're painting different parts of the thing, but you're also not changing colors and you're not changing stuff. So you're speeding up your time. You're not cleaning your brush off and you're still making the army uniform while still making it look wild like that.
That is really, really interesting. That makes sense. So what you're doing is like you're taking the idea of batch painting, which I don't think we've explicitly said what batch painting is. I mean, basically all it is, it's like, hey, you got to paint 10 dudes, and please correct me if I'm wrong here. Let's say, like, we'll take my zombies. I have to paint 50 zombies, right? So when I batch paint them, I like to hot glue mine on popsicle sticks in like groups of like 4 or 5 or whatever fits on there. And when I'm batch painting, it's like, okay, I am painting the pants. So I have my color for my pants. I'm going to take my 5. I'm going to go through and just keep going like down the line, like an assembly line, like Donnie said. But what you're saying, Donnie, it's like for your goblins is you took that idea of batch painting, but you took like the color, and instead of saying, okay, all of these guys have red pants, you kind of staggered it. You're like, okay, red boots, red pants on the next one, red shirt on the next one, red hat on the next one. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yep, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I could see that because you're using the same color to, keep your theme together so your units feel coherent, but then you get that idea of like, okay, these are goblins, right? They're kind of like wacky and crazy, so they're not like 100% matching like it would be if you were playing if you were doing like Kingdoms of Men or something like that.
Yep.
Now, did you come up with that on your own, like just from trial and error?
I did, yes. I mean, I'm not claiming to be the first person to have ever done that, but I did.
Yeah.
On my own. Yep.
Rob, you have any examples from your past hobbying?
My tip is take the time to figure out a color scheme that's easy to paint. Avoid some of the brighter colors like whites and yellows. Like there's certain colors that are just harder to paint. I find earth tones are particularly easier to paint, especially if you want to go fast and you want to like give it like an Agrax earth shade, or you want to use a Minwax dip. Like that works really well with earth tones like the greens and the browns and the tans. That's my tip. Like, and again, it kind of goes back to what I said about eyes. If you pick the right army, it will work better with certain armies will work better in those color schemes. The other thing is you don't have to invent the color scheme. If you just go on the internet, you can just say like undead army color scheme for Warhammer or something like that. And you can just click on the images tab in Google. They have plenty of armies, and there's plenty of blogs out there that'll give you the color schemes and what specific paints they use. I guess to sum it up, one thing I'll say is don't reinvent the wheel, right? There's plenty of wheels out there that you could just put on your own car and, paint your army with it.
Don't reinvent the color wheel.
Oh, I like that.
Just look it up.
That's freaking smart. And to be fair, like, yeah, I mean, as you get better, if you are trying to improve as a painter, yeah, you will do things like get the color wheel out and understand complementary colors and, and all those things. But if you're just trying to get, I mean, I'm just trying to think of like armies that I speed painted. Like I do have a goblin army that this is gonna date me a little bit, but I remember like the Vancouver Winter Olympics. What was that, like 2010 maybe? I had all these like Warhammer goblins, and I just said, you know what I'm gonna do? During the Winter Olympics, which is, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks probably, I'm going to paint an army. And so I just literally had a TV and I just set a little table up and every night that's all I did was just paint this army. And all I did was just base coat them, wash them, and then maybe one little highlight, like maybe on the end of the goblin nose or like edge highlight a shield. Nothing crazy. If you're willing to commit to a very simple color scheme and you've really hammered down the technique, you can go pretty quick with a good effect.
100%. So I think we all have some experience in batch painting, but I think as newer hobbyists, it might be important to note to don't try to do everything at once. So I think, me personally, I think you have to have like palette cleansers when you're batch painting, because I remember when I knew I had to finish my undead army, like so I could make it to this tournament, like way back in the day. So I mean, I think I took like a week off from work and was just like painting nonstop and just batch painting zombie after zombie. And honestly, I would say, on the second half of that week, I wasn't really having a good time. So do you guys ever, like, when you're batch painting all your goblins, Donnie, do you break it up? It's like, okay, maybe I'll do my red feather method for like 20 models, and then I'll go paint a war trombone or something like that. Or do you just like being as efficient as possible, and you're just like, nope, I got to knock all these out at once?
Well, here's one thing with the efficiency thing that I wanted to make sure I mentioned. I wasn't sure where I was going to slip it in the episode, but maybe this is the best spot to do it. First off, I mean, one of the big things is having a dedicated hobby space, because even if it's a small space, and I understand not everybody has access to being able to have like a full blown desk or 2 desks or with shelves and all these sorts of things that they can just leave set up all the time. But if you can leave a little space set up, or a slightly bigger space if you've got more opportunity, to always be set up where you can just sit down and get 10 minutes of progress done without having to take all your paints out and everything, like that's a huge deal. Because the answer to your question is I've never painted more than 60 goblins in a single batch in my life. And in fact, when I was doing my rabble originally, I did 280 goblins in one huge batch, is one huge massive batch. And how I did it efficiency wise, and the part for me that's actually a real bear that really wears on me, is I hate assembling models. Like I just like I don't know, gluing stuff together is just like 5% of the fun of painting it for me. Like I just totally hate assembling it. But the thing is that when you, for me at least, and you break this up, like I very rarely do like 3-hour sessions. Like that's super rare for me. Typically what I do is that, like, when I'm building all that, you start building it. And the thing is that the 60th goblin assembles massively faster than the 10th goblin. So once you start doing it, things get more and more efficient. And I can guarantee you that I built the last 200 goblins faster, or total, like all 200 of those, I built them faster than it took me to build the first 60, because you start to figure out where exactly the mold line is, what exactly pieces you're clipping, you know exactly what's on the sprue, and everything just goes way faster when you do it in that kind of a massive batch for me. And that takes a certain type of mindset. I mean, that's really one thing that we have to look at too, is that we're doing this for a hobby and we're having fun doing it. So, make sure that you're enjoying what you're doing. But for me, like I come from like a long distance running background, like I've got kind of a lockdown mentality where I can just sort of assembly line stuff pretty well. And so, yeah, that's basically what I did, is that, I assembled all of it. I built all of it, and then, prime it all up, and then I have it all on the table. And I don't actually put stuff on sticks. Like I actually glue it for priming. I glue them to like a metric socket sorting case that has stands. So I glue the foots on them so I could spray out of them. But I actually clip all the models off, and they're all laying flat on my desk when I'm painting them. And I pick them all individually up and I paint them. Like I don't paint them on a stick so I can pick them up and move them everywhere. And then once I do that, I might only sit down for 10 or 20 minutes at a time. Like I've got it all set up on a table. I sit down, I pull out my red paint, and for 10 minutes, that's all I'm going to do is slap as much red paint on as I can. So red boots, red shirt, red hat, red boots, red belt, red hat. And then I just, for 10 minutes, I just completely focus. And that's what I do is I just paint hardcore out red for 10 minutes, wash off my brush, and then go to work. And I've accomplished a ton because I spent 10 minutes without any kind of interruption or anything like that. And if I can sit down for like a half hour, an hour, and I can pop on a podcast or something, yeah, you can get more stuff done and you can do a few different things. But like literally that Man-at-Arms horde, Estelle and Nias, I didn't have a single hobby session more than 15 minutes long since Masters. And I painted, 40 Man-at-Arms spearmen, Estelle and Nias, all just by doing tiny little batch painting right before work and right after work. And that's how and a big part how I pump out so much volume of stuff is I get stuff done in like little tiny batches of time because like my desk is set up and I can just kind of go do it.
We started off that conversation like talking about efficiency, but you also hit on another equally important, if not more important part, and that's consistency. Is you found a way to be efficient and you're very consistent. I think what you said about having a hobby space, it doesn't have to be a desk with, TV screens, extra computer screens and everything. Like it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Just having a little, like even just a mobile laptop stand where you have your couple of paints, your, I almost said toothbrush, your paintbrush, your coffee mug with water, and then your model set up. So that way, you can just take 10 minutes and actually physically do the painting and not take, okay, it's like, hey, I have a free 10 minutes, but five of it's going to be spent like getting ready to paint. That's a really good point. But we know everybody's situation is different. So maybe that's not possible, and you can only do like longer stints. Like maybe it's like, okay, it's only really worth it if I can like only hobby 1 hour at a time. But hey, it's like you'll find like whatever works for you, like doing it. I think the biggest thing is just to try something, like try Donnie's red feather method. Try finding all of these methods. Try some Army Painter quick shade, right? There's a lot out there. And I think, Donnie, I 100% agree with you that the assembly is the biggest roadblock for me too. Like I really I think that the episode will be released by the time this one released, but we talked about it in the secondhand models episode. I really like buying secondhand just so I could buy assembled models, because I enjoy painting. The number one thing that I enjoy about hobbying is the basing aspect of it, like the multi-basing and putting the terrain bits and bobs and like making everything feel like a really cohesive unit. And I used to not really like painting that much. Like I didn't hate it like I do. Well, I'm not going to say I hate assembly. I just don't enjoy it that much. But what really got me to enjoy, like thoroughly enjoy painting, is getting an airbrush. I don't know why. It's so sad. I know we've talked about it before. It's just so satisfying to use it. And I think that could be one other note, maybe not necessarily for beginner hobbyists, but there could be one other note to kind of speed up the process, whether you want to prime with your airbrush, whether you want to base coat with the airbrush. I really like the airbrush. I have two airbrushes, like one that is kind of like my Amazon, like paid like $50 for it back in the day, where I just slapped down primer and put my matte varnish through it. And then I have my other nicer airbrush that I actually use for like painting and base coating and highlighting and stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's a ton of different things. Like you said, airbrush and lots of different things. Like everybody enjoys different methods and different aspects of the hobby for sure. And there's a ton of different ways to speed it up. And airbrush is getting like really good at an airbrush. You can paint out massive volumes of it. Like I messed around a little bit with it and did like zombie trolls and some different things like that. And I've definitely liked it for sure, but I'm nowhere near like some of these guys on the internet. You can see some pretty crazy stuff with airbrush stuff if you look up videos for that. If that's an avenue of the hobby that you want to explore, just like all these other things, like I would, just look up on YouTube or just Google, airbrushing videos, and there's some pretty fantastic stuff out there.
I think we have to talk about it. We've covered a lot of great techniques and tools and tips that like we've personally used, but do you guys currently, or have you ever really used actual like contrast paint, speed paints, slap chop methods, like whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I've tried contrast paints, and I did like a Mantic Elf army. I had got like Mantic Elves. I don't know, maybe at Adepticon when they're blowing them out, it was like $1 a sprue or something stupid, right? So I built an elf army and I used contrast paints, and it looks okay. I have found that contrast paints are a little bit of a misnomer. They're not as fast as people think. You have to be very clean when you're painting, right? If you only want to use contrast paints, right? If you don't want to go back and clean everything up. So I personally find them difficult to use to the point where I just gave them all away. I prefer just a base coat and then just to give it a heavy wash if that's the type of effect I'm going for. But I will say there's some cool things you can do with contrast paints. The way it works. But so I have tried contrast paints. I think what I haven't tried is the Fanatics range. Is that what it's called? From Army Painter. I think that's like a contrast paint.
Called speed paint.
Speed paint, thank you. Yeah. So I've heard much better things from that. I know Jeremy is a big fan of speed paint, so that might be something I try in the future. But I have so much paint now. It's like I'm like I loathe the thought of having to buy. I have all my airbrush paints. I have all. It's like I have 1,000 bottles of paint. Do I really want to buy more paints?
Yeah, and it's certainly possible to just exclusively use contrast or speed paints and doing like a big, huge thing with that. I mean, I actually use them a fair deal nowadays, and I use them as a supplement, sort of thing. It's like maybe I use them on the staff, maybe I use them as a base coat, and then I'm highlighting and dry brushing and doing other stuff over the top of them. But like essentially, especially with the colors that work, and some of the colors are just absolute crap. Like they just don't cover very well, and they don't give me the effect that I like. But I've definitely run into a few different colors that I've really liked on some different things, especially like wood grain type colors or like metallic speed paints and some of those sorts of things. And they're really great because they basically give you your base layer and your highlight or your wash layer, depending on what color it is. And it basically does like 2 or 3 steps in one. And then you can kind of go in and do more detail stuff on top of them if you want to, or you can just sort of leave them if it's, certain aspects of the model by themselves and you like the look of them. So I think they're a good kind of tool adding in there. Or if you're just, basically wanting to do nothing other than like super clean base coating, like Rob said, when you're doing, it's hard to blend like the edges of contrast paints and things together if you make a mistake or something like that more. And so, yeah, that's good because it's like my Basilans, like I did that before the contrast speed paint revolution and all those sort of things come along. So like how I tie together and kind of cover up a lot of the little blemishes and things like that is like with a wash and stuff like that. And washes cover up those blemishes on like monocolor sort of paints a little bit better than they do on the speed paint lines and things. So it's definitely something that I think is worth experimenting with, and they work really well for some people. And I've definitely used them pretty heavily on my goblins. Like a lot of the base of the goblins is actually contrast and speed paint for the goblins of Red Feather. And then I went back in and did tons of highlighting and dry brushing and different stuff like that on top of kind of base coating, most of that in contrast and speed paint.
Yeah, I had an interesting use case for this. I think it was the Army Painter speed paints. I had got that set when I started dabbling with it. And when I was painting my Revenant Cavalry, this was actually for Adepticon 2023. Funny enough, when I was revamping my Undead Army for like the 3rd time, it's probably on version 5 now. With this last hobby batch I got going on. But anyways, I was like really. I think this is when like slap chop, that term like became really popular. So I was really wanted to try it out. So I had tried it out on a couple of the undead models. Like I did a Bellfire Catapult, and I was like pretty happy with the results. So I was like, let me try this out on the Revenant Cavalry. Well, part of my backstory, I had I'm all about the backstory with my armies. I had an idea of like, okay, I want my Revenant Cavalry to like they're the Mantic models, but I want them to have the idea of like, okay, they're skeletons, but like they're made out of stone, or at least like the skeletons are not, but the horses aren't, but like the skeletons are. So it's like half undead, half kind of like necromancy, like animated stone. So I went with the idea of like, okay, well, I can start with that idea of like your basing for slap chop, where you're getting your values with like you start with the black, you move up to gray, and you go to white, like so you can cover your highlights with the white, just to lay your values out with no actual like color saturation or anything like that. And then I use the speed paints on the horse to be like, okay, I'm going to make the armor and the cloth green. I'll do the skin, I'll do the eyes, I'll do this. And then for like the actual skeleton itself, kind of just clean it up with some more highlighting and some dry brushing. And I was actually pretty happy with how it turned out. Was I like, oh my God, I love speed paint so much. This is all I'm ever going to use. No, it's kind of like what you guys said. Like it's just another tool to have in the arsenal. It definitely it sped it up pretty quickly because like basically I did the highlighting and the shading when I was building those values up, moving from black to white, and then when you lay that glaze over it effectively, like you're kind of like just bringing that out there. So it's an effective tool to use for sure, but I don't think I would ever paint like a full army using that method. But I've seen people doing it, and it looks great. It really just depends on like what you're looking for, what theme you're looking for. Like Rob said, was talking about, like half the battle is choosing your theme from the beginning, right?
Yeah, and some of them too, like one in particular that I like is the Idic and Sun or Yellow Sun. I remember it's one of the GW contrast paints, and like that, frankly, paints fire better than I've ever been able to paint fire. Like it just sort of goes on, and it basically gives you like 3 different tones of color, like over a rough surface, and it looks like really great, fantastic fire. And that's actually what I use for basically the only thing I do for fire nowadays, is because that one paint just goes on really well. So like some of them for certain things like that can go on crazy good. And in fact, I would put that fire up against anything other than like the highest level painters that are winning awards as being just really great looking fire. Like it just, it comes out really, really well. And so, some of the colors for specific purposes like that can give you a really fantastic look, and really, extremely fast, and possibly even better than what you might even be able to paint putting a ton more time in, because frankly, I've never been able to paint fire that great. But that Yellow Sun just sort of made me feel bad about my decades of fire painting because it looks better than a lot of the fire that I painted for years.
So you mentioned fire, and it kind of just made me think that I feel like everybody kind of has their like Achilles heel in the hobby. Is there anything else? And Donnie kind of already mentioned it, but Rob, like, is there anything that always gives you a hard time, that like always slows you down when you're painting?
A lot of it's just based on if I'm just doing traditional layering, and layer, is if I'm trying to do bright colors. So if I can avoid the bright colors, that helps. If you're trying to paint like a white hat, it's like, it's going to take a while to highlight, right? It's just going to take a while. So if you can avoid that, there's lots of little tricks. Like, we've talked about some of them, which is just, in terms of something that gives me trouble, I don't know. I not really. I like, I'm kind of a simpleton when it comes to metallics. I just like to, use a good quality metallic paint it, wash it, and then, but be creative with the wash. Maybe add, normally we're going to, wash it with black, right? Null oil or something. Put some purple in that bad boy, or some blue. Let's mix it up a little bit. And I'm a big fan of taking the various, and I should say, I love the GW washes. I know they've changed formula. They're not quite as good, but they still work. And I'll take like empty pots and I'll mix things like purple and black, and I'll do a 50-50. And so that's how I do like armor on my ogres and stuff. And so, it's not really that it's a difficult technique. I try to find shortcuts where I can. So armor is one of them. I'll just, black and steel, black, purple wash, maybe a couple edge highlights, and that's about it. There's stuff that, Donnie mentioned fire, right? Ethereal stuff can give people, and me, and over the years. But with YouTube now, you just go on YouTube and you look, and you'll find videos on how to do it. And there's places like Duncan Rhodes Painting Academy, right? He's real good at like providing videos of things that make it more accessible. The trick is, I kind of poo-pooed contrast paints, but GW in particular has a bunch of great technical paints that I like corrosion and those kind of things. And there's some products called Dirty Down if you want rust. Back in the day, there's alcohol based products where you literally just put this stuff on, let it dry, and it will look like rust. You don't have to, you know what I mean? Like it's like it looks like rust or patina. You can buy these things now. It's funny because Donnie, when we were cutting our teeth at Warhammer back in the day, it's like we didn't have these things.
Oh no!
And it's like, man, I'm just thinking back, like, man, how awesome that would have been 20 years ago if we had some of the various hobby products that we have now. I'd be. Whew. But what about you, Trent? Is there things that you struggle with?
So it's funny that you ask that because you guys have helped me out just from recording this because my biggest thing is eyes. So it's good to hear all the tips and tricks that you guys have done to help out with that. And then one thing, Rob, when you were talking about metallics, I feel the same way. Like I just like using a good true metallic. The first like paint set that I ever really used was Army Painter, and I feel like they actually have pretty decent metallics. I saw where I think recently Vallejo put out their True Metallic set, where I think it's either like 3 or 4 color pairs, but I've heard really, really good things about them. But same thing, it's like you put a good base down of a good metallic, you wash it, and then maybe like shade it, highlight it up, whatever you want to do. One thing that I like to do, and not just for metallics, but it could work with that too, is I really enjoy shooting like translucent inks through my airbrush to shade, to just kind of
tints and stuff.
Yeah, to tint basically.
Yeah, I think what's the new company? Monument Hobbies. They have some ghost paints, right? That are not opaque. They have a translucence to them. So yeah, you can really add some cool effects.
And I actually just, even when I started doing that, I had found a tutorial. It's funny, it all relates back to what you just said, for painting an ethereal effect. Most of the ethereal effects that I'd found were like your typical like ghostly green, like ectoplasm glow. But I kind of have like a blue sub theme going on in my Undead army. So like my whites, I don't really use them anymore, but I used them a lot in 3rd edition, are Spirit Host models from GW, because I never really liked the white Mantic models, especially when they were all metal. I just didn't like that at all. And I was like, hey, I just want to keep it really simple, right? I knew this from the beginning. I'm like, I just want to do like a ghostly blue. So I followed this the tutorial I found, and just basically would like swap out the colors. Like the tutorial I was watching was like, okay, this is how you do it for green. But I'm like, okay, well, I'll just find similar like blue values, right? Like light, dark, add white to it, whatever, and get it. And I could never get it like just right, like just how I liked it. So what I ended up doing was looking, that's when I learned about shading with translucent inks through the airbrush. So I kind of was able to like find that tutorial, but it didn't quite like fit what I wanted, what I needed, like for this specific project, and kind of modify it a little bit. And for the inks, I'm sure a lot of stuff has changed because I haven't bought inks in a long time. But I just went to Hobby Lobby and bought like, I think it's acrylics, like the glass ones. They work super, super well. The biggest thing about them is when you're using inks, they're very, very fragile. So you can't really do too much like after you put the inks on, unless, and I normally varnish my stuff, but if you want to try to do something after the ink, you can like kind of throw a layer of varnish on there to protect it a little bit like that. And I found some interesting recipes for my terrain bits on my models too. Like I wanted to like a lot of the stuff that I have for my Undead army. I mentioned it before. I have like broken walls and broken statues, which is pretty simple stuff, right? Like you can paint a wall with the prime, a base coat, a dry brush, a wash, and like call it done. But I knew I was going to use a lot of them, so I wanted some variation in there. And I found this really interesting recipe where like you start with a black primer, you spray on like the skeleton bone. I think it is skeleton bone from Army Painter. So, but you don't like base coat it completely. You're almost like shading the black, and you're keeping the black in the recesses to cover like the cracks in the walls. But then you go through and you pick out certain stones with like some of those natural colors that you would see. So like your reds, your yellows, your oranges, like that you would see in nature. And then you just like wash it all over. And it really like, it's amazing. Like you see, I always love when you see something base coated, because I remember when I did my first test wall for this, I actually still have it. when I looked at the base coat, I was like, dude, there's no way in hell this is going to work. And then once you put that wash on there, you're just like, it just transformed it. And you're like, all right, well, I guess that's my recipe from now on.
If you are trying to paint fast, and you're not going to try to go the route of, I'm going to paint a primary area, like my flesh color with the spray, then use a dark primer. At the end of the day, if you're a little sloppy, it just sort of automatically puts shade where it needs to shade. And then my other tip is, if you are going to go like the black primer and you're going to paint skin, take your skin tone, or maybe even like a red, and mix half it with white, and actually get like what I would say like a bubblegum pink, and just paint the area with that first, and then go over it with the flesh. I know it's an extra step that most people don't want to do, but if you're trying to cover black with a bright color, like you got to get a base coat to kind of give you a heads up. Because if you don't do that and you just go with the flesh tone, it's always going to look real dark and dreary. I guess it'll knock the vibrancy down of your flesh tone.
Swinging back to a couple of things you mentioned, like with the washing and the metallic thing, one thing that I accidentally discovered, which is really cool, if anybody ever does gold, experiment with using a red ink on gold. It doesn't seem like it makes any damn sense at all, but it looks fantastic. And I had done that on some of my old Undead Vampire Accounts GW stuff back in the day on gold. And for some reason, a red ink on gold just looks really fantastic. It's super simple. It's basically a gold base coat and then a red ink over it, and it just looks really, really good for that. And then now I'm blanking on the other thing that I was
and I'll jump in. I'll jump in. If you don't want to go all red, go sepia, which is a red brown, like that like my whole Tomb King army is done like that. And it goes back to my laziness. It's like gold, sepia wash, maybe a little highlight. That's it. Like it's like 3 steps, and that's how I started every Tomb King model I had. And then go in and paint the bone and stuff.
Man, I'm telling you, there's just so many tips and tricks out there nowadays, and it's almost like the opposite of the problem that you guys were discussing like 20 years ago, when like there weren't really a lot of these resources out there. Now there's too many. Now you have to like sift through them to find exactly what you want. But I think it's a good problem to have. I know just one random one that I just thought of off the top of my head, kind of going back to the speed paints and contrast paints when you kind of talked about spraying red on gold, is like, well, I watched a video of somebody painting orcs. I think it was for 40K, but orc skin. And the first thing that they did is so they like did a zenithal highlight, getting ready for like slap chop. But for the orc skin, instead of just going into straight green on the contrast paint or on the speed paint, they would like base coat in pink and then put the green over it, and it looked phenomenal. So there's all kinds of like weird tips and tricks out there that you can pump out some like quality models in a good, like, efficient amount of time, right?
And like another one too that's like weird, like one thing that's really hard to do correctly if you don't look up a recipe or something for it is blonde hair. But like, doing some sort of like an off-white and then like a super light brown and then you're yellow, and then you really get blonde hair that pops, just doing that simple, quick, like type of a process. And you can look up more advanced ones and stuff like that, but like you can't just paint yellow on hair and have it look right for blonde. So like a couple of steps like that, but it's super quick. I mean, it is one extra like little step, but it looks fantastic extra when you get that extra like little off-white or light brown or both underneath of like a yellow, and then it really makes like the blonde hair look textured, and it looks looks more like hair than just like yellow lined whatever.
Building on what Donnie just said, this is my best tip. If you're just trying to paint a color, blonde hair would be an example, and you're not familiar with color wheels and you don't want to go look up a bunch of instructions, just go buy a triad from Reaper, like literally the blonde hair triad. It gives you the base coat, the mid-tone, and the highlight, and you just use those 3 colors, and you can even just dry brush that on, right? Paint it. And I should say, I'm a little different. A lot of people paint the mid-tone and then they wash it down and then they bring it back up to a highlight. A lot of times my base coat will be the darkest color, and then I'll just layer it up from there. So if you do that, you can just dry brush hair, right? If you're careful. But my point about the triad is they've literally picked the colors to use that complement each other, and you don't have to think about it, you know, because I don't know about you guys, like that's like the hardest thing. Like I'm like, oh, this needs to be green, but what color green? I have 10, probably like 20 different colors of green.
Oh,
Which green do I want to use? Right. And then once I pick the, like, this is what I want it to look like. What color do I wash it with? What color is what's my deep in the recesses? What's my highlight color? The triads just get rid of the whole thing. It's 3 bottles of paint and it's, you know, yeah. So
yeah, there's definitely some cool things out there like that too. And like, you know, and like the finishing step, like you had mentioned, you know, like, you know, you base coat something and then it doesn't really look that great, but then you throw that wash on there and then just that last finishing step, the last 5%, you know, makes the 90% pop, and then, you know, the finishing step. So that's another thing too for like newer painters to kind of get used to, is that a lot of times you're probably only one finishing step away from having your work look from something, you know, that's mediocre to something that's looking, you know, tabletop standard or above. Like, it's, you know, a lot of times it's just one step away. And, you know, don't get discouraged during the middle of, you know, painting the model or the unit until you actually get to that final step, because like, you know, throwing Agrash Earthshade on the top of something, if you want something dirty, you know, like I was just doing that with my Basileans because they discontinued, you know, Secret Weapon used to be a company that made washes, and I used a wash called Sewer Water on like all my Basileans, and now I had to replace it with Agrash Earthshade from GW now. But like that last little like wash that kind of makes them all dirty, like it blends all those like little lines together. And you know, and if you're wanting to have like a dirty kind of field worn army or an undead army or goblins or, you know, anything that's not like super pretty, you know, parade style sort of like bright army, you know, if you're going to wash it and stuff like that final step really pops like the whole army. And like that last step is like just a massive transformation of the model. Like if you took a picture right before the wash and right after the wash, when you're doing something like that, you know, it's like you have to look close, like really tell that it's even the same thing. Like it just changes the look so much, and that final step is huge.
yeah, I was waiting for you to say baby poop as one of the washes from Secret Weapon. Mr. Justin used to create his names for his washes. Yeah.
So I think we've shared a lot of ideas and some techniques and some of our experience that we've used, but like on the painting side of the house, on the hobby side of the house. But I think we could also mention that some armies are just easier to paint and have fewer models than others. Would you guys, let me ask you this, would you guys recommend certain armies for newer players? And I think it's more important when we talk about newer players to be like people that are completely new to wargaming. So we're not talking about people who like have been playing 40K for 15 years and finally want to play Kings of War. They kind of know what they're getting into.
Ogres is less model count. The models are bigger. They're actually easier to paint. Now, I would say the older ogres for Mantic aren't necessarily easy because they have a lot of straps, but the newer ones have a lot more heavy armor, and I didn't find them too difficult. And again, I didn't speed paint, so I did 2 demo armies for the shop, and one of them was ogres, like I don't know, 750 points. And it's like I just did what I told you I did before, like a gold sepia wash. Painted the skin, washed it, one highlight, eyeballs, and then added like red straps to like the cloak and the straps and stuff, and then maybe some wood. Ogres are a great choice. Number one is large infantry is really easy to stretch the models. So I mean that's one of the things we didn't talk about, right? I don't think. Well, Donnie's a nutter because he's got above model count. But like if you have a 40-man horde unit, you don't really need 40 men. You just need enough to make the base look like that it's dynamic and that it's like it looks like what it's supposed to look like. And you know, I've taken a lot of crap about this because I have Kingdoms of Half-Men army. So it's Kingdoms of Men, but they're half-men, and they're Westphalia miniatures, and the models are really small. I have like a few hordes. I had 35 guys on the base, or half-men on the base, and it didn't even cover half the base. Like they're little enemy guys, right? So, you know, at the end of the day, tell your story, right? if you want like a big mountain like wall behind it, or I've got a base that's got basically like a pub, like a halfling style pub, and the knights are coming out of the pub and they're mounting up to to go ride to battle. Like, just tell a story. Don't go crazy. You don't have to paint. If you have a regiment of 10 knights, I mean 6, 7, 8, whatever. Like you can get by with less. Especially you mentioned it, and Trent, I know Crozier is a big fan too. Add some cool dynamic elements, right? That can really, that also the elements piece coupled with, using consistent like hobby textures, the grasses and the flocks and all that plus the paint scheme, and then you also have certain architectural elements, like what I would call like buildings and statues and even rock formations. If you can add some of that consistency, it'll even sell the army even more, right? I went way off the topic here. Your question was what army, what I recommend. There's two. One is ogres because they're big, and anything that can be dry brushed. So I'm looking at you, Forest Shamblers, right? Or any of the elementals, right? You could dry brush the heck out of the rocks and the trees for sure. Trees, those are, and I would say dry brushing is a skill that, sometimes people like poo on it, like, dry brushing. Man, if I could dry brush it, I'm dry brushing it.
Oh yeah, it's huge. I guess for me, those answers are definitely the ones that you might gravitate towards. But for me, it's just flat out like whatever they're the most excited about, because I hate to discourage any player. Because you're like, every once in a while you get these games where you're like, oh, don't play that faction because it's not very good. It's not very powerful right now, or you're going to have to paint a crap ton of them. And I just, kind of see the light go out in like a new excited gamer's eyes when somebody's poo-hahing on the faction that they're super excited about. So like, I guess if somebody asked me that question, that's definitely my answer, is like elementals or ogres and that sort of thing. Like if somebody's thing, but really it's whatever they're excited about. If they're super excited about Ratkin, help them understand that they're going to have to paint a ton of models, and that's part of it. But if they're really excited about it, I don't discourage them from doing it. Like, you help them push into that journey and help them do it, because frankly, they're way more likely to finish something that they're super excited about than something that's going to take them half the time to finish, is, I guess, the way that I see it. A lot of new players and getting into things. So I just try to ride the wave of what people are excited about. If they like dwarves and they played a dwarf in World of Warcraft and that's what they want to do, then help them do dwarves.
That's a very, very important note to say. It's like, obviously you're not just worried about the army that you can paint the fastest. Like, you want to lean in, especially to the newer players. You want them to lean into what they're excited about. I mean, I was the same way. Like, my first army was undead. I knew I was signing up to paint a ton of zombies, but like, I was pumped about it, right? Like, that's what I wanted. And I think it, took me forever to make my mind up about what my army wanted to be. And, here I am, like 5, 6, God, I guess 7 years later, still using the same models as before. So that's a really good point. So I have another question here while we're kind of on like the new player topic. But I feel like we've been leaning into the new players a little bit. But I mean, speed painting's for everybody, right? I mean, you guys have been hobbying for, I don't know, Rob, you've been hobbying for what, like 50 years now, something
I'm 52.
Like that. So,
yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah.
But what do you guys think would be the biggest mistake that you would see or that you've experienced that like new painters make? Whether that be just like jumping, because I've kind of heard one thing, we didn't really talk about this, but I've kind of heard one way or the other, and I know Mantic has a slow grow going on right now. Some people are of the mindset of like, hey, you want to build up to a 2,300 point army, or at least in the US, like that's kind of the average, but chunk it out, right? Like, do the 500, like slow grow, play a game, do another 500, play a game, like take it slowly, right? Other people have the mindset is like, hey, you want to play 2,300 points, make your 2,300 point list, get the models, and do it all together in one hit. Me personally, and this goes back to me like only working really well with deadlines, if I tried to do the slow build up, I don't think I would ever get anything done. Like, when I built my first army, I was like, all right, bet, here's the list. I'm buying all the models, I'm building them, I'm going to do it like all at once. So what do you guys see anything? Do you have any feelings like either way about like what you would recommend for somebody starting out a new army, or really just like working on a large hobby project?
If you are building to a 2,300 point army, I think it is going to be easier to keep your streak going and to keep motivation up if you build some units, paint some units, get them on the table, go build some more units. I have found that if I'm trying to do I'm going to do all the bases and I'm going to do all of the model assembly and then I'm going to do all of the painting. Yes, it is efficient, but it takes you so long to see any finished progress. Like you know, if you can just get like one, like, I don't know about you guys, you can paint a model for a really, really long time, like a big giant or something, maybe like a whole weekend on it. You're like, oh, this is amazing. But that moment where you cross the finish line and you're like, oh, this is going to be on the table now. Like that more than anything recharges the batteries. And I'm like, okay, what's next? And so that's my big thing is try, you know, if you want to do it, we talked about batch painting, right? But even with batch painting, try to continually find opportunities to get things over the finish line so that you feel that you're moving forward. Because like if you're building a huge 2,300 point army and you've got them all built and based, cool. But if that took you a month or 2 months to do it, like none of those are like close to the table yet, right? Because you still gotta paint them and you still gotta put the textures on the base. And I don't know, I need motivation, and one way to do it is just to feel like I'm constantly delivering another touchdown. What about you, Donnie?
Yeah, I think that that's exactly true as well. I mean, slow grows are a fantastic way of doing that, but frankly, most of the time it's really hard to catch somebody who's just starting the hobby with a slow grow, like right out of the bat. Like most of the time, your slow grows, you're kind of getting established players that are starting second factions and all those sorts of things. I mean, but if you do get lucky and you happen to be starting a slow grow, or you have a bunch of new players that are all getting started at the same time and you want to do a slow grow, I mean, I think that that's fantastic. I've had some really great experiences with like new players being able to get started with slow grows like that, and it's great. But I mean, normally if you don't have a slow grow going, I agree completely with Rob. It's like, most of the time you're going to play the full point games and things, like either lending them models or playing with bases and things. But then they're starting to build up their army. And I think them getting some units done and then making progress is way more motivating as they work towards it. And then I try to get them to convince them. I mean, obviously they're going to do what they think is cool and what they want to do. But I try to kind of get them to start off with like more of the core base of the army and start doing the units, because as they play games, they might actually change like what the future list is going to be. So I like new players to be able to do their first few units kind of being more of the base, sort of like what the army is going to be. Like if you're playing undead, getting zombies and skeletons going as a base, because those are almost certainly going to be in most of your lists. So it's nice for, their first 500,000 points to be stuff that's going to be used for sure. They're not randomly painting like a vampire and a dragon and then deciding, halfway through the project that they're never going to field the dragon, So it's nice to kind of get started on some of the kind of base troops that for sure they're going to do, and then help them play games, and then they can kind of change their list and then get really excited, like, oh, I really love bolt throwers now for Northern Alliance. So, now I'm going to paint some bolt throwers, I think that that's a great way of doing it.
You said something too, Trent, about like what are the mistakes new players, new hobbyists make. The biggest one is, don't forget, if you're trying to play Kings of War, your job is to get an army on the table. I always tell myself I'm an army painter, not a figure painter. My primary thing is to get an army on the table. I'm not painting for a competition, right? I'm trying to get armies fielded on the table so I can play. And if you can just keep that reminder in your head that like, our job, if you want to play this game, is to get armies on the table. And if you can just keep it, my mantra is, you're an army painter, not a figure painter. And I think that helps me keep in mind that don't go crazy. Down the road, when you get your hobby chops, great. Go ahead and go all in. But when you're just getting started, Mark used to say, my favorite color is done. And there's some truth to that, right? Just get it done. And even if you're disappointed with the result, here's the first thing I'll tell you: keep those models. I have models that I painted as like a high schooler. They're not terrible. Well, they are terrible. You can see the progress. And so keep some of these models over your hobby journey. You will see that actually you may not think you're getting better, but you are.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the other thing too is that the first army is always the hardest one. I mean, once you have an army to play and you can play games with, you can sort of do all these other additional armies if you want to do additional ones at your own pace. Like you don't need to worry about it. It's that getting that first army up and getting that first 2,300 points on the table is probably the biggest hobby I think hurdle for a lot of new players, and that mental block when they start getting going, especially if they like change factions or something halfway through. Sometimes people paint like a few models and then they'll change their faction, and that's always a bit tough on players too. As they try to get whatever on the table.
Yeah, I think that's a really good spot to be in, is to kind of have an army that you play, and then it kind of goes back to what you were saying, Donnie, is like you recommend new players to really, really focus on getting those core units done. And I think it's especially important in 4th edition to have the core units done so you can actually build a legal and, relatively competitive list. And then once you have that core block done, like let's say, and I know, sorry, I keep mentioning undead, but it's the only thing I know, right? So I'm going to stick with it. It's like, hey, I have all my core units fleshed out. I have my skeletons. I have my zombies. Maybe I'm going to try this my mini dragon, the vampire lord on undead Pegasus. So maybe you spend a week painting that, or a weekend painting that. If you're speed painting it using some of the techniques that we're talking about, you play it in a game and you're like, that kind of sucked. Well, it's not like it's a wasted time, right? You got a cool model painted. Maybe you use it down the road. But either way, even if you don't want to use that, you still have like a workable core force that you can continue to use and enjoy some games out of. And then I think we didn't talk about this before, but there's no reason that, like, if you really, really just like want to get in there and play the game, which, is kind of like what Rob was saying is the end goal of the hobby, is to get an army on the table so you can play the game and it look cool and thematic and immersive, and you can get yourself, like, feel yourself into the world and just enjoy your time. But if you really, really are like more so on the gaming aspect, like if you're leaning heavier to that side, there's nothing wrong with painting with or playing with some unpainted models, right? Like, while it's a work in progress, if you have them put together, blue tack them on a base and just get a feel for it. And then you can even do that. You can even just use test bases to kind of test out your list as you go. Like, maybe you have your 500-point core block done, but you want to test out a little bit in the gameplay before you decide to paint the next 500 points. That's completely fine. Especially go down to the local game store, check that out. It's really, it's your hobby, right? And at the end of the day, it is a hobby. Like, you're supposed to get enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, bases, borrow models from other people. I just loaned out all my goblins to a new guy that's getting some games in up here in Duluth and getting some playing in. And I loaned out my goblins and he used them as, Skaven, or not Skaven, I'm sorry, Ratkin, going way back to the old game. But yeah, it was like Ratkin army and being able to do it, and he had a great time, and, he was getting into the hobby and kind of learning how he's going to tweak his list. And he's painting up a bunch of the core stuff right now. And he's already, thinking like he's going to play in Lady as our ringer in the next weekend with a bunch of borrowed models from the Twin Cities guys. And he's really excited and getting into the hobby and already looking at how he's going to tweak his list slightly. But, the stuff that he's got done is core units and stuff. So like the list stuff that he's probably going to be tweaking after Lady is stuff that he hasn't painted yet. So that's kind of a great avenue to be able to get into it. And of course, Ratkin is one of the most model heavy intensive factions you could possibly get into, but he's super excited about him. So, that's the road he's going.
That's awesome. And you got to just take the hobby mojo and run with it. That's great. And I think that's something, one other thing that I feel like I would keep bringing up points here is that we've been in the hobby a little bit of time, but I think it's something important to talk about. Is like, everybody deals with hobby burnout at one point or the other, whether that's like a lack of time because of stuff going on in your life, or just because you're not motivated, like you don't feel the motivation to work on the hobby project that you're doing. Don't feel bad just because, like, you don't feel like painting, right? Like, oh man, I have this awesome project I want to work on, and I have all these speed painting techniques that I learned from Countercharge, but I just, like, don't feel like doing it, right? Like, that's fine. It's part of it. you'll get back to it eventually. I mean, I took like a 2-year break. I think it was longer than that actually. But I think that's just something that I'm sure people mention in passing, but it's kind of part of it. It's a hobby, right? Like you come in and out of it, that's fine. We'll always be here with open arms whenever you get back to it.
You did come up with a little list of lies that we tell new painters. Some of these we touched on already, and I think we should hit on it, right? So the first one is you need to thin every paint perfectly. Just get paint on the model, right?
Yep.
Like, yeah, right. Like, yeah, this whole thing, it needs to be the consistency of skim milk. Yes, down the road when we all started, I guarantee you, none of us used a wet palette from the start, right? You'll add those things later, but just from the beginning, just paint.
I have an anecdote for that one. Don't even worry about it, about thinning your paints. Even we're talking about like a new hobbyist, because just I was talking about all the walls that I painted for my upcoming hobby project I got going for my undead. I was a little rusty with the airbrush, so I was like, I need to put skeleton bone on here, so I'm gonna put it in my airbrush, and I'll put some thinner in there, and I'll mix it up in the cup. Man, I can't tell you how many times I clogged my airbrush. I told myself, I'm like, hey, I need 20 minutes to just base coat these, and then I'll be good. It ended up turning into like an hour and a half affair. Every time I get it clogged, I'd have to turn my air pressure up to like 50 psi and shoot it out, and I'd be like, oh, okay, now it'll be good. It happened like 5 times.
And then the second lie is that we tell them every model needs eyes. Donnie's explained why that's not the case. The next one is you need to edge highlight everything. No, you don't. You could just base coat it, wash it, and you need 40 different to get started. No, like there's armies. Like honestly, like you want an easy army? We've all seen it, the Ghost Army. So it's literally just a bunch of ethereal painted guys. It was just a white primer, and then I used the technical paint, and that was literally it. And then the last one is you shouldn't play with unpainted models. Play with what you got, right? And we'll all encourage you to continue the painting, right? Because we all want you to get to that point. But if you're playing in your local shop, by all means, heck, if you don't even have models, just cut some bases out of cardboard and play. We want you to play.
Oh, yeah. We've all been in this hobby for a very long time, and we all love beautifully painted armies. But have you ever seen anybody tell somebody not to come because they don't have unpainted armies? We're all welcoming. We want you to be there. If there's any reason that you're thinking that you shouldn't be there because your army doesn't look there or whatever, just throw that out the window, because this community would much rather have you there than to have you there with like with the best painted army in the room. Like we want you there. We want this community to be as big as we can, and we want everybody to be here. So yeah, just come on down and hang out.
Before we get to final advice, maybe we can share a few comments that we had on our Facebook post that Trent put on the Facebook group. So first up, Kyle Poole said, "Prime in your base tone: brown, tan, red, blue, green, etc." I think that's a great thing. We actually kind of hit on some of that. And then we've got Danny Graves. This is one we didn't touch on, right? Which is use a bigger brush, right? It saves loads of time. Paint areas that you can reach with the big one, and then use a little one afterwards to touch up the edges for neatness. He also says use a unifying base coat. That's kind of what Kyle said, right? Inks provide quick shading, but it's time consuming and can often be messy, needing some areas to be repainted. Instead, try lightly painting the ink, right? That's a top tip, right? We were talking about that in regards to like the mini wax or the army painter shade tones, the tones. Like you can paint a wash on. You don't have to dunk your model. You can just paint it in the area that you need, and you'll have more control. This is another crazy thing. I don't know why I do this. I will cover the whole model with wash. I will usually have the thing mounted on something, and I will invert it for like 30 seconds. Like let the flow the wrong way, and then I'll turn it over. And I don't know why. It works for me. You got it going the wrong way, and it starts to dry a little bit. And then when you turn it over and then you leave it set in the correct orientation, it just ends up looking a little better. Danny also says boredom is a time killer. If it's a chore, then it will naturally take longer because you're less invested. Have a couple of projects on the go at once. That's a great, we talked about palette cleansers, right? But just being able to jump and forth between different, this might be one of my favorite ones, but he says, rather than mixing paint to highlight, buy a highlight as separate paint. It goes to that triad comment that I made. Don't mix colors when you're starting out. Just buy the color.
All right, this one's from Dylan Scribner, our local co-host in Arkansas. So he says, this one is kind of hard to describe in text, but I will try, LOL. When picking color schemes, pick colors that work together harmoniously for shades. For example, if I want to paint the new Guardian Brutes, I could do red-black patterns on the fur, blue for the cloth, and gold for the armor panels. All these colors require different color shades, but if the fur is brown to light brown and the cloth to the leather tone and the armor is silver, then the whole model can be shaded at one time with the brown tone, like Agrak's Earth Shade, like talking about the wash. Then you just pick out highlights and you're tabletop ready. This method works even better when paired with other time-saving techniques like priming and the base color, which I feel like everybody's mentioned, so definitely do that. For the example above, I'd prime in a medium brown. So what he was talking about, he'd prime in medium.
Then we got Dave Musgrave. He says, paint everything brown. In my mind, like if you are starting out, a brown or a black primer is probably the way to go. Probably would be brown because black is, if you do have any bright colors at all, black's hard to cover, but brown is a nice compromise. And earth tones, again, are easy. You know, it works with everything. He also says, keep a relatively tight color palette. You could probably have 4 or 5 and have a decent looking model. Dan Zambrowski says, he primes white followed by an army painter wash. That's interesting, right? You've primed it white, so your colors are going to be more vibrant, but then use a light wash to really help you see the folds of the cloak and where the eye sockets are, and where the neck, you know what I mean? Like it'll actually help you see where you need to apply paint. That's a great tip. And then we got Mark says, just try to follow these simple rules with my Northern Alliance army. Keep your color scheme simple. Apply it to every unit in the same way. Spend less effort on painting second and rear rank figures. Unit bases make up half of the overall look. You know what's funny? We could have skipped the whole episode and just read those 4 rules. And I think
honestly, we should have just started. We'll just put this at the beginning and then cut it, and then we can just like skip the last hour and a half because they covered it all like perfectly. And one other note I saw from Dan here is that I thought was interesting. I've never tried this before. Is he says at the end he tries to, so he batch paints in large numbers, one color feature at a time. So we talked about batch painting quite a bit. But he says, I also try to correct mistakes in batches as well, rather than stopping at the mistake. That's pretty interesting. I've never thought about that before. So like, you know, I think of a mistake when you're batch painting. It's like, okay, you're painting the pants, you accidentally get red on the leg. Instead of trying to go back, wet your brush, wipe it off, like whatever you got to do, then you just kind of leave it and then go back to it later. So that is interesting. I wonder, you know, it obviously works for him, so maybe it does increase efficiency a little bit. For me, like you were saying, Rob, my OCD, it's like, nah, I got to fix it right then and there.
Yeah, I was going to say that as part of my final thoughts, that exact thing, especially with the base coating. It's a little different when you get back into the edge highlighting and stuff like that. You do have to clean that up faster, I feel like. But when you're getting the base coats on, just getting as much paint on as you can, especially if you're doing the thing like I do where you're only painting 10 or 20 minutes, like just kind of bursting through and getting as much color as you can on during that base coating phase will save a ton of time. Because most of your pop and everything like that is going to come from your highlighting and your washing and your dry brushing later anyway. And you can kind of touch up those base coat mistakes later. So yeah, I definitely agree with that, especially with the base coat phase. Like the point of the base coat thing, you have to get through the base coat is to get as much color on as you can. And if you get all the color on there, then you're getting back into fixing the little mistakes and doing the highlights and the dry brushes and things like that. And you can really spend your time on that. But if you get through that base coat phase, you'll save a ton of time, and then you can focus more on the stuff that people are going to actually see for the quality part, which is the highlighting and the washing and dry brushing and all that sort of thing.
And I think with that, we're going to take a quick commercial break and then come back and share our final advice and closing thoughts.
This is Chris Cax. You're listening to Countercharge, but I don't know why.
And we're back. Thanks for joining us today. I think we covered a lot. Honestly, it was really good. It was great to hear some of the techniques. I'm definitely going to be researching some more of the eye techniques that you guys were talking about, so if that's one less thing to worry about. But really, just kind of a couple of points here. I know we covered a ton, but really just remember your goal, right? We've said this multiple times, but you're painting an army to get on the tabletop. You're not trying to paint 100 individual masterpieces, right? Each zombie doesn't need to be perfect. Paint an army creates games, memories, and motivation. like Rob was saying, sometimes it's really good to take one single unit from the beginning, from being new on sprue to painted and playing on the tabletop. So just seeing that, I know when I finally complete a unit and put it on the tabletop, when I put the final grass tuft on there, I get a pretty large feeling of satisfaction and being like, okay, I'm motivated to like keep going at this project, right? And most importantly, done is better than perfect. I know we mentioned that a few more times. So painting quickly doesn't mean painting poorly, right? I think we covered that. Whether you're using slap chop, speed paints, quick shade, like whatever it is we're talking about, or your own recipe, your own techniques, the goal is the same. Get your army finished, get it on the table, and start playing games and making memories. Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to remember how many edge highlights you had, how many free hands were on your shields. They remember all the great games that got played, all the laughs that got shared on the tabletop. We'll have most of the stuff that we talked about in the show notes. Look there for all the events that were mentioned at the beginning. And then also don't forget about the Siege of Samarik in the summer that starts on the 14th.
Thanks for listening and keep countercharging.
Thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time on Countercharge. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at counterchargepodcast@gmail.com, on Twitter at countercharge15, or by commenting on the Countercharge Kings of War podcast Facebook group. If you enjoy the show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Until next time, keep countercharging. Music is a composition of Kevin MacLeod and is licensed under Creative Commons.
Welcome back to the...
I got some outtakes. Man, I love. Look, Donnie, you don't understand my love in life, and I get to like put outros and stuff.
And he gets to put it in his vault.
From Matt Crozier, and made like a 3-minute song for his daughter, just out of him just making grunt sounds. I'm like, so I'm excited, man.
Oh, that's amazing.
It'd be a YouTube video.
All right, let's try this again.